I'm Zach,
And I'm Ben.
and welcome to the Movie Vault. And today we are going to review 1987's classic RoboCop, which kind of goes off the back of the series that we've been doing on sci-fi films with deeper meanings. If you have not checked out the first three, which are The Matrix, The Fifth Element, and what did we just do? Blade Runner, the director's cut specifically, then please check those out because we are finishing it out with this, and we're going to move on to, what are we moving on to?
Paul Newman movies.
Yes, I believe 5 of them. So
5 Paul Newman movies.
I believe we'll be there for a little bit.
So these arcs, they have undefined lengths, 4 or 5. We originally were like 3 movies, but now we're just, it doesn't matter. I mean, we could have a 10-movie arc here soon. I'm excited for the sci-fi movies with no meaning arc.
What would fall in there?
That's a great question. It might actually be tough to find ones that have like no...
Because you can extract meaning. That's our job. But
with deeper meaning, I guess is what we mean. Yeah.
Yeah. But today we have a pretty deep meaning in the film RoboCop. Unexpectedly, I think coming into this film, I thought it would be more of a Jason or Friday the 13th type of film where it's campy, it's gory, it's really just this evil. I thought RoboCop was like in the lineup with Freddy Krueger. I was thinking like it's going to be...
He's a horror movie and he's the villain.
Yeah, and they just got to fight this RoboCop. It's this cop that the government makes. He goes bad. But, I mean, that's what we're used to. And then I watched this film, and it's much deeper than that. I mean, the acting is a little bit better than campy horror movies. Not tremendously better. And the plot is awesome.
Yeah, the plot's amazing.
And it's hilarious.
And I have to say, I have to give credit to Community for discovering this movie because they watch a parody of... Or not a parody, but like they're an alternate reality version of RoboCop called Kick Puncher, which is hilarious. He has like very similar personality and antics to RoboCop. But the interesting thing about RoboCop is that the guy who wrote the movie, Edward Neumeier, was working on the set of Blade Runner when he got the idea for RoboCop. So any connections that we see are very intentional. It makes sense because, I mean, Blade Runners are a part of the police department, so it's like this like futuristic but dystopian at the same time, where technology has gotten a lot better, but there's other parts of the world that have gotten worse, like crime, and that's where we are in the world of RoboCop because we're in Detroit. They were like, when you think of crime, what city do you think of?
And then let's put it in the future with more crime. So yeah, and it's interesting coming off the back of the previous films how well connected this film is to Blade Runner and The Fifth Element when it comes to the city. Just this, the futuristic city is where all these plots take place because it's such a breeding ground for pure sci-fi violence, and it's beautiful. And if I'm
not mistaken, they're actually trying to replace old Detroit with a new city.
Yes,
that's the whole like.
Well, they call the district Old Detroit.
Yeah.
So. The corporation is trying to, the Omni Consumer Products is the mega corporation in Detroit, and their headquarters is there. And they're coming up with a way to replace it, and they have this whole model set up, and it's this futuristic, dystopian, but also to them utopian like city, which making Detroit perfect, that's a hard task. But Omni Consumer Products thinks that through manufacturing, efficiency, and production that they can do it, and so they create the cyborg law enforcement officer, RoboCop.
Yeah, and there was initially supposed to be a different one called ED 209, which is essentially just this like really bulky robot with guns. But unfortunately, the person who they tested that on got murdered in front of everyone in the boardroom. But the people weren't really upset about that. They were upset about the product not working, which again goes back to these themes of like capitalist entities taken to their extreme where it's all about efficiency and the product and not really about the people at all. But we're also introduced to Bob Morton, who's played by none other than Albert from Twin Peaks. Miguel Ferrer, who was perfect for this role and is also just a great actor in general. Oh yeah. It was fun to see him in a different role, but he plays essentially very similar character. But there's also RoboCop himself, who is Alex Murphy, played by Peter Weller, and he is a cop who gets reassigned to the West Precinct, which is like worse, or Metro West Precinct, and then he and his partner Ann Lewis go chasing a crime gang by themselves, which was a mistake. And this gang of people led by none other than
Red from That 70s Show.
yeah, Red from That 70s Show, who is called Clarence Bodecker, I think is his name.
Bodecker.
And he loved killing cops and torturing cops because he used to be one, and so now he loves killing and torturing them. So he started
Which is logical.
Yeah, this is the main character. We could tell Alex Murphy's going to be the main character, and then for some reason he and Anne decide it's a great idea to like pursue this gang with just the two of them, and they split up.
No reinforcements and going alone.
Yeah, saying like, "Oh, we need backup," and they're like, "Backup's gonna be here in like 30 minutes."
That's like having 4 8s and saying, "I'm going alone in Euchre."
Yeah, it's dumb. Like they should have waited.
Or wait, you have to have 9s at least.
Yeah.
I think you throw out the 8s, right?
And say, yeah.
Okay.
And say you're going alone. You're right. That is very dumb. And so he gets well, they think he gets killed, but actually he's just very, very injured, and somehow they're able to save him to the point where they can turn him into a cyborg robot. Which the way that they do this is actually pretty unique.
It was awesome.
Filmmaking
through the lens of his eyes, and it's a computerized screen because he now has this computerized brain, and it's like you're seeing the world through a
when he goes
robot.
to the hospital, isn't it through his eyes? It's like it's very unique.
And then it shows like he'll like wake up at different times when they're testing on him, putting legs on him, arms on him, and then even like there was one part where he might have had a limb, like maybe an arm, and Albert, I'm just gonna call him Albert because he's from Twin Peaks, comes up and says, no, we want him with his arm off. If we cut off his arm, and he's like, well, he's clinically dead, so we can do whatever we want with him at this point. So there's a lot of they're trying to create this utopian society by bending the rules. So they're already off to a bad start.
He did die, but he didn't. I guess his brain must have never died. Like there's this very weird gray area in this new society where they can save you through technology. So,
there's gray area in the world. Brain dead people. What do you do with them?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
See that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. Moving on. But for me, it hits close to home. I'm from Detroit.
That's true. You are.
I experienced crime. Well, I saw it. I wasn't crimed upon, but I saw crime next door, and I won't say what it was, but it
was bad.
Yeah, it was pretty horrible, and Detroit is an awesome setting for a futuristic robot cop to come in. Because to be honest, like Detroit cops in Detroit are not considered heroes, and they weren't by my family, they weren't by anyone, but to some people you feel more danger by cops, like you feel like they're dangerous. Some people feel more safe when they're around cops. So the idea of a RoboCop, this robot powerful cop that can defeat anything, will make some people feel safer and some people feel less safe.
Yeah, of course you might feel, if you feel safer by the fact that it has a less biased system of assessing crime.
Sure,
but how can you trust that because it still comes from the same
algorithms
institution.
are biased no matter what.
Yeah,
and it was awesome seeing ED-209 kill that guy, because it seems like ED-209 was based off of an algorithm, and its morphology was based off of a non-vertically they didn't need to go upstairs. That was in fact the ED-209's weakness was stairs. So RoboCop is a step up from this. In fact, it's another corporation under the Omni Consumer Products Corporation that, by the failure of ED-209, comes in and says, we can replace this with a better version of cops. We need to protect the city. There is going to be lots of crime in these changes that are happening. And if we're going to pitch this idea to, whatever the larger entity is that makes these decisions, then we need to make sure that we're going to have a safe city. And they do that through RoboCop.
Yep. And so the main person that Bob Morton or Albert is having to go against in terms of the Omni Corporation is Dick Jones, who's the senior president. And then there's also the chief executive, who doesn't have a name. He's just known as the old man. They actually never say his name in the movie. So there's this like rivalry between them. But the movie is kind of about the battle between these two executives, but it's really about RoboCop and him having to make decisions on his own, and then also be faced with the fact that he is a machine ultimately when he goes in and tries to confront Dick Jones because of the information he has that he receives from Clarence Boddicker, who's apparently in cahoots with Dick Jones. He can't do anything because he's programmed to, one of his directives is he can't do anything against any Omni Corporation executives. So he has to overcome that.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to see it play out because when he becomes RoboCop, he becomes this almost a different entity than he was before. He starts to get these memories back throughout the film, right, of his child, of his wife. But he never fully realizes himself as the person that he was before. Because he talks about himself in the third person. He's like, this guy he had a family. And he's, he has the memories of this guy, but he's not this guy anymore. So there's this interesting aspect to like, does memory define kind of do our experiences kind of make us different people? I guess. I don't know. Is RoboCop different than the guy he was before? I'm trying to remember his name. Murphy.
It's a great question because he has a wife and child who are still alive, who have moved away. And now he's also falling in love with Anne. But then you're like, can you really fault him? Like, you're like, should he go back and reunite with his family? But is he Alex Murphy anymore? Or does he just have, or is he just like able to understand that he was Alex Murphy?
Or maybe he is and he's sick of his family.
Yeah, and he's like, this is a great excuse.
Yeah, he's like,
or they left,
Yeah, maybe so. But I think Peter Weller does a great job kind of with moving his mouth because, a lot of this movie is just his mouth. By the way, why would they design
he's a good-looking guy.
Oh, he's great
then
looking.
They just murder him, so.
Why wouldn't anyone shoot his mouth?
That's a great question. Everything is like covered except for his mouth.
Yeah, it's like his Achilles heel.
True.
I don't know. I just thought about that. So many people were shooting at him. Nobody got his mouth, unless his mouth is made of metal too. I don't. I'm just trying to find plot holes in a movie that isn't supposed to be analyzed in that way.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of plot holes.
Yeah.
But the thing that does make this movie a little bit different, maybe more towards the Fifth Element side of things, is that I think it is somewhat a satire.
Oh yeah.
Along with being a serious. It's a somewhat serious critique of like. Late capitalism, as we say about every one of these movies.
You can't have a movie without late capitalism being implemented.
Yeah, or just like the way that people pursue money over everything else, maybe is a better way to explain it. And maybe a little bit about like, I don't know that there's any real critical analysis of the institution.
I just found a tick on me.
Well, that's a little concerning.
Yeah, I'll have to look at myself right after. Luckily, you didn't get that much blood. I don't even know where I was.
Were you out in the woods?
I don't think so.
Out in the bushes?
I'm glad I found it. I don't know. I was like, why does my head feel weird? Okay, continue. Sorry. No, I think it's ironic that they made a movie about late-stage capitalism, and then they go on to make, like, how many sequels?
Yeah, that is funny. No, yeah, Hollywood is, like, the epitome of late-stage capitalism, and they love critiquing it, but they can always hide behind the fact that, like, that they're benefiting from it at the same point. But there's some great funny commercials throughout this movie.
Oh my gosh!
Including, the one's not really a commercial. It's this weird show with this guy who just keeps saying,
I'd buy that for $1.
I'd buy that for $1 with this like these girls around him. It's just very strange, and somehow that's caught on to pop culture. I really liked the Nukem board game.
Yeah,
where it was like these kids were like,
he's like, Pakistan's borders are surrounding.
It was hilarious. It was about like global conflict, and it was a board game called Nukem, and it was just these little kids play, and just the whole concept of it was just hilarious to me. So it has a really creative way to transition between like parts of the movie, like we were talking about with the one part where it's completely from his perspective when he becomes RoboCop, but yet it transitions out back to like the traditional like third person shots. But it's all pretty seamless, and then it goes to these cuts, and there's these really dramatic, kind of funny but serious scenes, like the one councilman who's like holding everyone else in the building hostage, including the mayor. Yeah, and he's like, the RoboCop comes. This is like one of the first things he does, and he's like, keep him talking, and he's like saying he wants this like specific car, and And then you see that car later, like one of the bad guys is driving it.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's like, it seems kind of ridiculous because it's just like he wants all this stuff and he's so greedy he can't even see RoboCop coming. But yeah, it's really, I guess the movie's kind of about greed.
Yeah.
It's a lot of greedy people and RoboCop having to defeat them all.
Yeah, and speaking of, we related it kind of to Blade Runner and Fifth Element. There's a scene where he punches through the wall and grabs his neck, just like the same way that Roy punches through the wall and grabs Rick Deckard's.
Oh yeah.
In a I'm blanking, Blade Runner, and I think the fun part about this film is that it balances, joking about these kinds of themes, but also presenting, that this is the full extent of pursuing modernism to its fullest. And we talked about this with Professor Johnson on our other episode. Which, are we releasing this before that, or?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I think we said on this episode we'll release this one second.
Okay, whatever.
That's what you said at the start.
Sure.
I don't want to confuse the listeners.
Yeah. So it's kind of like I'm just surprised that we picked films that fit so well together,
We didn't really plan it that well for it to have turned out this well. You're right.
Yeah. And the greatest thing about this film is that it also explores kind of humanity and robots and how you kind of can, if you merge those two themes, which we know we can't really do in real life, but if you merge those two things, what does that look like in a sci-fi sense? And I think we mentioned it, like some of the best sci-fi films are ones that become no longer they're no longer sci-fi in the distant future, and it's one of the greatest strengths of RoboCop is that a robot is like affected by the loss of his humanity, and he's kind of like stoic, emotionless, robotic, and he's trying to rediscover this humanity that he once had, while at the same time being his own distinct person, and discovering his, I guess, humanity or robot humanity for himself, apart from Murphy's former life. And that's the most interesting thing to me. He's alongside, was it Nancy Allen plays, I forget her name. What's her name?
Oh, Anne?
Yes, Anne Lewis. Nancy Allen plays Anne Lewis, who is, a great police officer, and she kind of helps him. Like, she's in the hallway when he's trying to leave and he breaks out from that dream that he had, that nightmare of his former memories that kind of break through and his hardware, and he gets out of his containment facility, and she gets him in the hallway, confronts him, and talks to him about his past. She's like, "You used to be Murphy," and he starts to remember, like, that's my name. Yeah, that's kind of who I was.
Yeah, she's very straight up, and this annoys Albert to no end because he's like, no, he's a machine. He's a product.
Yeah.
He's not Murphy. This is not him.
Yeah, and it's so similar to the Blade Runner because it's he's a replicant basically. He's used as a product who was basically a human used as a product. Made by some government entity or large corporation entity for production, for the means of efficiency or production. And what happens when someone breaks through that mold, right? Whether it's Roy or RoboCop, they become villains to these corporations, right? So then the corporations try to kill them. But in our eyes, we see it through their eye. We see it through the movie's lens that it gives us, and we see that they're not villains. They're just trying to break out of that mold. And RoboCop is another great example of this. What do you think about the acting?
It was very good and pretty, like, it fit with the movie. There's a lot of characters that are like almost have cartoonish performances, but that works really well. Peter Weller actually, well, I guess in some ways you could say cartoonish. It's a very robotic performance. Mm-hmm. But obviously, like, I guess Roger Ebert said he thought that Weller's performance was, like, portrayed like a very noble, like, well-thought, well-intentioned type of person, even while being a robot, which I kind of agree with. Nancy Allen's performance is good, but I think, to me, the characters that will always stand out in this movie are Kurtwood Smith's performance as Clarence Bodicker, Ronnie Cox as Dick Jones, and Miguel Ferrer as Bob Morton. Like, the three of them, they're just so, like, they're on it with their just, like, different angles of. None of them have good intentions, really.
Yeah.
Even Albert, who's positioned more as like kind of the protagonist with RoboCop at the start, but really he kind of fizzles out. I mean, he gets killed first off, but also like his actions aren't really like, it's clear he doesn't really care about RoboCop, and he's kind of like using this just to like get higher within the company. Yeah. He doesn't really have pure intentions at all. And then Dick Jones is just sort of the sleazeball CEO type, even though he's not technically the CEO, that you just think about when you think of big companies. And then Clarence Boddicker is just like a sadistic villain. Yeah. So it's like all these extreme like versions and personalities, and I think that just makes the film like so memorable and so fun to watch.
Oh yeah, I mean,
especially if you love really violent movies. Yeah, because this movie is definitely that.
Oh yeah, it was kind of gross in some parts.
Yeah.
Kurtwood Smith does awesome in this film. To see him go from that 70s show, which wasn't actually in the 70s, but
no, that was probably after this.
From
right?
this to that 70s show where he's kind of a mild-mannered, curmudgeon father, and then this film is such a contrast. Now, I will say there is another Twin Peaks guy, Ray Wise, who plays Leland Palmer in Twin Peaks, who is in the gang of Clarence Boddicker, and that's kind of fitting. Because he's already kind of evil in the Twin Peaks show. No spoilers. I mean he's not evil. He's just a dad. I'll just leave it at that. So he stuck out. I mean, he's just menacing in this role. He's doesn't care what anyone thinks. He doesn't care about his own men. He's willing to kill his own men. They throw him out of the back of the truck onto the windshield, and he's willing to. I mean, he tried to kill Murphy right on the spot. Didn't even care to interrogate him or get any information. For him, it's more of a game than anything else. And we don't necessarily know the motives of why he's trying to do it, but that kind of makes it a little more.
He had a falling out with the police, and now he hates them.
Sure.
And he wants to deal cocaine. So
yeah,
that's like his motives.
So there's some financial incentive, but he does an awesome job. And I just agree with you fully. I even think the old man was kind of funny. He kind of plays like in a jovial way,
naive. Like he's kind of like he's like the leader of the good old boy. They always say the good old boys club with
good boys club.
I mean, there were actually some women on the board, which I was impressed by.
Yeah.
At Omnicorp, but it did seem like they had a lounge for the executives, and it looked like they had urinals in the lounge, so clearly it wasn't like supposed to be for women to go to.
Yeah.
So definitely did seem like a good old boys club, and he seems like the guy who's just like, oh, this guy's a good guy, so we'll just promote him, and doesn't really like see the negative aspects of what some of the people are doing to his company. Because I would see like he didn't actually seem like that bad of a guy, but it was like all the stuff he's enabling is kind of like
you're guilty by association, enabling,
and by leadership. I mean, if that's like what he was obviously creating a company culture that was like lending itself to this, and they had all these like really high aspirations, like building an entire new city to replace Detroit and stuff that you're like, I wonder if that's like the best thing for everyone in Detroit.
Yeah. I mean,
and the only reason they wanted to stop crime was so that they could continue with their business projects.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like that was motivated by necessarily great things either.
Even at the end of the film, you can see that exemplified, and throughout the film as well. But when the bad guy Dick Jones gets thrown through the window and falls down, his demise, one of the employees looks over at who he thinks is going to be the new CEO and puts his thumbs up, like, good job, Remember that? It was just such an odd scene, but to show, like, these scumbags are still trying to earn their next spot in the position, no matter what happens. It doesn't matter if someone dies.
You want people to die. Yeah. Like, you are killing people. Like, Dick Jones killed Albert's character. Yeah. Like, you're literally killing people to get promotions and stuff. That's like and that way it's a satire of the corporate world too.
Yeah.
So not just in the sense that it's a satire of what corporations do, but also what being in a corporation is like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And that remind me of a scene in the middle or at the beginning of the film when the old man comes in. He says like, we're going to create a new world, he's saying like, we're going to create a new world, new city, whatever. And everybody just starts clapping maniacally and just agreeing with him nonstop and smiling. And I mean, it does a great job of kind of satirizing, but also caricaturizing the corporate world and the large corporation entities. So I mean, it's I can't help but draw parallels to other films that we've done, even The Matrix, like, or even The Fifth Element, where there's this program where you can retire for life, and it's like a get out of jail free card, and it's run by this large corporation who kind of is taking advantage of the people below them, and that's happening in all of these sci-fi films. I mean, it must show that like in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, people were pretty afraid of large corporations, and as we should be now, because Facebook is going to take over the rest of the world. And I probably shouldn't have said that because they'll probably own Spotify soon.
Yeah, they'll probably buy Spotify and then take us off the platform.
Meta. So actually, we love you, Meta. Just so the AI robots who are going to scan this later on will not put a target on us.
This podcast is something negative about Meta.
Yeah. Please listen to these resources about COVID-19.
So apparently the opinions of what is happening to Murphy as he's in RoboCop are like varying. Some people view that Murphy still has a soul and is still alive. Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek actually weighed in on this movie.
Great.
He says that it'll sound really derogatory if I try to do a Slavoj Žižek impression, but he thinks that Murphy is between life and death and is deceased and simultaneously reanimated with mechanical parts. He regains his humanity but is being programmed by others to his former state as a being of desire. So Zizek calls this a return of the living dead, a fundamental human fantasy, a desire to avoid death and take revenge against the living. So thank you, Slavoj Žižek, for that. That's an interesting perspective. I tend to actually maybe lean more towards that's what's happening versus him still being alive.
It doesn't seem like he's still alive. Yeah. 'Cause it seems like he doesn't, although he has some type of emotional attachment to his past, there's no specific draw for him to his past.
Apparently Verhoeven has attached Christian things into this film with Murphy's death analogous to the crucifixion of Jesus. That's probably not...
Because he had his arms. Yeah.
Probably maybe not
healthy,
but that is what Verhoeven himself said.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Yeah, I mean, even in Blade Runner, Roy has nails go through his hands.
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that, and it's just odd. I mean, that they take a lot of those biblical narratives and implement them into
even
sci-fi.
Verhoeven's quote about what he thinks about Christianity, he says he doesn't believe in it, but he sees the value and the purity of the idea. So you're like, you can do everything but actually believe in it.
Sure. Yeah.
Is what happens with a lot of these artists, it seems like.
That's what the Jews did. Sorry, I'm still
trying to... The Jews in the time of Jesus. Yeah. Just not general statement about all Jewish people.
Oh, yes. I'm so sorry.
Well, it's just...
Yes. I'm so sorry. And not all of them. Not all of them. Just a very select group of them. Well, a big group of them. Back then, 2,000 years ago, guys. Nothing about the crisis today, okay?
Yeah.
Nothing.
All right, we'll move on. This also had cyberpunk influence, just like Blade Runner, so you can see these are sort of like brother and sister movies. Mm-hmm. Or maybe this is like brother and weird cousin. Mm-hmm. Blade Runner is kind of like the more normal movie, which maybe it's hard to believe that you say that, but this movie is like a weirder, campier cousin of Blade Runner. And maybe not quite as futuristic, a little bit closer to the present.
Yeah, I mean, Blade Runner is 2019. This is... What year did this take place? I think it was 2199. Or no, that was Matrix.
Matrix, yeah, 2019. Actually, you're right. It's probably kind of close.
Yeah.
But I think they had maybe a little bit... They didn't have flying cars and stuff.
Yeah.
In
oh, wow.
This movie.
We're getting there. It's 2028.
2020. So it's actually past when Blade Runner was supposed to be.
So Blade Runner is 2019. This is 2028. What year was Back to the Future? 2015?
2015.
Wow. So we're getting to all these years.
2199 is a little further away.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we look like that in 2099.
Well, maybe I'll be like back as RoboCop and still be kind of alive in 2199.
It's so interesting to see what... I mean, obviously, it isn't supposed to be a realistic depiction of what the future will look like. But at the same time, there are going to be some predictions that are true. I hope by the time 2199 comes around that we have a hoverboard like in Back to the Future.
That would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. That'd be cool. Like Subway Surfers. Did you ever play that game?
I did play Subway Surfers.
You know when you double tap?
You double tap and you get that. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
cool.
That'd be awesome. But maybe not.
It's interesting. This movie got 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's pretty good.
It's just surprising. I mean, it's not surprising.
It's not. Yeah, it's like a movie I would expect to be like 60, 70%. It is a cult classic, but like I didn't realize how much how universally praised this movie was.
Yeah, I think it's close to a 4-star on Letterboxd, like maybe a 3.7 or higher.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because I thought it would be a campy, like, stupid story with no depth, but it had a lot of depth. I think it shows the dangers of not only policing or heavy violence in policing. That's all I'm going to say about that. But it also shows the dangers of corporate entities having control over law enforcement or being extensions of the government. I mean, that just gets crazy. Where do you separate the powers in that?
Yeah, that's actually it is a very scary reality to think about because Tim Dillon's been talking about it. The robot police force in New York City.
Canine officers.
Yeah,
that are robots.
Well, you can see, like, I mean, being a police officer is actually, as much as people criticize the police, it's not like the best job ever to be a police officer.
No. At
the same time, and it's one of those jobs, just like nursing, just like being a doctor. There's responsibility with it. There's a weight to it. You shouldn't go into it thinking that you have to take responsibility for your actions and things like that when you go into. I mean, that's any job, but like there's certain service jobs that have kind of this like. There's an aspect of you're doing it to make money, but you're also doing it because you're serving your community.
Sure. And you can't separate. I think that's a great analogy. I'm just going to use it since I'm in the doctor world. So doctors and cops are similar in that, especially more than 10 years ago and before that, you're given a select set of powers to use them almost as you wish without accountability. So doctors would use a lot of malpractice. So that's why we have malpractice insurance now, and that's why we have all these systems in place to try to prevent that now. And now, there's a lot of police reform stuff, talking about stuff like that. Because there were problems in the police, and the structure, the medical structure. We talked about this. I don't know if we ever released this episode, but it's one of our secret episodes that we're going to give to Patreon.
Yeah, Patreon.
The medical system structure is flawed. So is the police structure. How can you say that the structure of the police is actually is flawless? It is flawed, and the government's flawed. Every single structure we have is flawed to some degree. So I don't think it's wrong to say that there's reform. I think it is wrong to say, that everyone is out to kill a certain type of people. But at the same time, we have to be okay with the fact that there needs to be improvements in every single institution that we have.
It's quality control. But then you wonder, like you were saying with the robots, it's like, would you prefer robots because you could theoretically, but the thing is they always go back to the person who programmed, but theoretically you can make them have less bias than humans. But it's when things like happen, like with the first robot, the MD-209 or whatever, or ED-209, like that robot, mistakenly killed someone, and then there's like, who's responsible for the death? That's the thing. Now, if a police officer, now this has obviously been contentious, but like if a police officer makes a mistake, theoretically the law should hold him or her accountable to that mistake. Mm-hmm. But if you just have a robot, it's like it doesn't mean anything if you decommission the robot or kill the robot. I mean,
like, okay. I think there's problems.
And then it's like, do you hold the team of programmers accountable for the it's just like, it's complicated.
Well, two things. One, a program can never be less biased than its creator.
Right.
And two, I think if we're looking at the corporate level, the higher players, the people that are in charge, the decision makers, if you're looking on that level, I think those people are ultimately responsible for a lot of these systems, but at the same time, they're not the ones directly interacting with, people. I'm thinking of the medical world, right? The policymakers in the medical world are a lot of times lawyers or judges that make decisions about specific cases, and that influences the rest of the medical system state by state, sometimes nationwide. And a lot of times they're not the ones seeing case by case. They're making a general rule for all. And that's where bias comes in, when you make a general rule for all and you're not looking at it person by person. And the police is very much an institution that has laws that are statewide that are supposed to apply to all people, but don't necessarily fit every context, especially for different groups, different living situations, different family structures, different and different areas of living, whether low or higher income, and the places that you station police, where there are higher crime areas. I mean, that already introduces bias. There's just a lot of that plays into. I'm not just talking about bias, but plays into leaving room for error on the ground level in the medical system and the police system. Again, I'm not just saying this is the police. I think it's such a hot topic right now. I have to preface with that. But RoboCop shows those flaws. I'm going to bring it back to RoboCop because RoboCop is not responsible for his own actions because he's programmed, right? And although he is some type of human, maybe in between life and death, he's not responsible for his actions because he's given directives, in fact.
Yeah, like he can't make the right decision. Well, I don't even know the right decision is to kill Dick Jones, but to arrest Dick Jones or whatever. Like he can't even make that decision because he's limited.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is some like fail-safe for the people at the top to stay at the top. So there's already bias in the system.
Exactly.
So it's like there will always be selfishness. There will always be sinful things within these programs. So there can never be a perfect RoboCop.
Or cop or system or anything.
Or utopia as they imagined it.
Yeah.
I mean, this Microsoft Intel thing coming in to Columbus or whatever.
Yeah.
They have these beautiful plans for the property, right, for the campus. I just know it's going to look a little bit less beautiful than the pictures, okay?
And they also have a beautiful plan for the amount of jobs that it's going to create, and it's going to be a little bit less jobs probably.
But I'm saying I watched, there was, in his State of the Union address last year, Biden talked about how Intel would create so many jobs in Columbus, make chips that will benefit the government. But I'm like, it will also create a lot of problems for us who are already here.
Yeah.
So there's no perfect system anywhere. I mean, RoboCop has 3 prime directives: serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law. And then the secret one is any attempt to arrest a senior officer of OCP results in shutdown. And it was listed as classified in the initial activation of RoboCop. So we get a hint that like there's going to be something wrong in the beginning of the film, especially when Albert's face is in the background and then it shows the prime directive 4 classified.
You're like, oh, that might be a hint. But it's interesting that this movie gains it almost instantly became a classic or a cult classic because it was very easy to merchandise. Like the RoboCop poster was very popular. They made lots of toys. It was a lot more marketable than most R-rated movies. Marvel Comics made like a more kids-friendly, I wouldn't say kid-friendly, but like a little bit less violent version of RoboCop for their comics. Some of the later movies were more geared to like younger audiences because that's who was buying all the toys. So it's interesting. Nowadays, it's interesting thinking about like RoboCop being like a super popular thing that kids love because of like. But I guess like as a kid, I played cops and robbers, and there's always this like sort of like when you're a kid, you have a more idealistic view of the world and how things work, and you're told police are the good guys and they're stopping the bad guys. So that's what I believe, and it's nice. It'd be nice to believe that that's how the world actually operated all the time. Yeah. But that's kind of, but at the same time, that's kind of what RoboCop is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about, this is ideally what the world is like, is like all cops are like RoboCop. But the world is not like that. And there's all this greed and selfishness. And the only reason RoboCop isn't like that, and he even has shortcomings, is that he's a program. So then it's like, as humans, it's like, I don't know whether there's room for, even though it's kind of a happier ending, I don't know how much hope there is in that. Like we have to trust in this machine. It's interesting because they tried to make a RoboCop statue in Detroit, but there was a lot of debate over what the symbolism actually means to have statue. It's a little convoluted. Yeah, a statue of RoboCop. Some people didn't think it was such a good idea. Yeah, and it's weird. I don't know if Paul Verhoeven, when he directed this film, imagined that someone would be reviewing this film in a time where RoboCops were almost real. Yeah, that is true. That's a good point. I mean, there are robot units surveying the subways of New York as we speak. And it's crazy to know that, like, and one of our favorite comedians, Tim Dillon, as you mentioned earlier,
talks about like you have to be on your best behavior around these robots and say, I love you. You have to like, I love you, robot. Thank you for your service, even though you might not secretly like them. Although we do love you, corporate entities listening to this right now. We love you very much, and we're willing to do whatever you want, so you don't kill our families. And I think Paul Verhoeven would be very surprised. Did you know that he did Basic Instinct, Starship Troopers,
Starship Troopers is a parody of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. So he's really good at parodying things. He did Total Recall.
Yes,
I think that's one of his big ones.
That's probably that might be his biggest movie.
Mm-hmm.
Other than this, I guess it'd be this or that.
And then Benedetta, Showgirls, Ellie, Black Book, Hollow Man.
Showgirls is sort of a notorious bad, good movie, good, bad movie.
Sure.
Some people have different opinions on it.
Whatever you want to say about it, but he has quite a filmography going on. With RoboCop, Starship Troopers, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Showgirls as well, kind of at the forefront of his filmography. He's a Dutch filmmaker. He's known for graphic violence and sexual content with satire. So that, I mean, besides the sexual content, I think.
Which really this movie didn't have much of, because he's a robot.
Yeah, I think he's pretty much, it fits within his category, I think, without the sexual content. Although it could be implied.
He has been, did he ever get nominated for, he's received Academy Awards nominations. I don't know that he's ever won it. He has one win for Total Recall. He also won a Golden Raspberry for Worst Director with Showgirls.
Oh, gosh.
So
it's notoriously a bad film or inappropriate?
Yeah, well, both. It's notoriously bad and probably inappropriate, but I think more people are just thinking about it being bad.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to research it, so thanks for letting me know.
But it's funny. It got a resurgence as like a cult classic, but I think it's a really very bizarre movie from what I've heard. Yeah. Yeah, and I think specifically with RoboCop, it stands out among. I've seen Total Recall. I haven't seen Starship Troopers. It stands out a little bit just because it is a little bit more campy, I'd say, than the other one. I mean, Starship Troopers, it's intentionally campy. I'm not sure if RoboCop is supposed to be intentionally campy. So out of his films that are supposed to be more serious, RoboCop is like a mixture. It's like a blend between Total Recall and Starship Troopers, I'm assuming. I don't know. There aren't many films that can balance that well. I'm thinking of like Spaceballs is almost like another Starship Troopers. Yeah. No, it is like satires are in theory like really good, but sometimes they can just feel like they're just a parody. Mm-hmm. Like Spaceballs, I would say it's a good movie, but it feels like it's just a parody.
Mm-hmm. Whereas, like there's no depth to it.
Yeah. Whereas this movie feels like a parody and it has meaning.
And the definition of satire is building off of some serious idea with levity and But I think it's a good balance. I'm not even sure exactly how he does it. I think there are some physical comedy, like there's a lot of physical comedy in this, where ED-209's falling down the stairs, RoboCop is in the water malfunctioning. I mean, some of these scenes like look funny. And then it's a lot of like over the top acting by villainous people in this movie as well.
I think it's a lot about intentionality. Like I think where movies get made fun of is when you're trying to do something serious and it looks goofy and you had no intentionality about it. Like as much as people love Star Wars, I think the Ewoks are an example of like, I don't think George Lucas was trying to do anything funny or like he was just like, this is going to be a great idea. Or he was trying to sell toys. I don't know.
Yeah.
But and now it just looks it looks goofy, even though we can love Star Wars. Like that movie is still a good movie, Episode 6, but it's just like a weird. It doesn't feel like there was as much intentionality as like knowing something's going to be humorous and playing off of it. Like you just subconsciously or consciously can just like tell usually with movies if something was like intended. You can still get entertainment out of it if something is funny and it wasn't intended, but it's just I think you could just see you just respect the art a little bit more when it's intentional. Yeah,
it's like I'm laughing with you, not at you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is that element as well. I'm just going to keep saying element since we do
the fifth element. We've done the seventh element. He was also funny. He was the first director to accept the Golden Raspberry for Worst Director in person, which I think
that's amazing.
Says a lot about his character.
That says a lot about his intentionality.
Yeah.
So, good for him. Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars.
Which I think for this movie is very good.
Yeah.
Like, considering what Roger watches, I think that's high praise.
You call him
for a movie.
Roger?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good friends.
Okay. Just making sure. Yeah. I think he said there's a very funny scene that he was talking about where he's like, a junior executive is chosen to pull a gun on the machine. The warning is issued. The exec drops his gun. The robot repeats the warning, counts to 5, and shoots the guy dead. He thought that was the funniest scene in the movie. He said it's funny in the same way that the assembly line in Chaplin's Modern Times is funny because there's something hilarious about logic applied to a situation where it is not relevant.
See, that's so smart. How do people formulate thoughts that just come out like that?
Yeah, I don't know. He's got a more conceptual mind. He thinks in concepts, which is a beautiful way to think. We think in context, which is probably a little bit less fun to write about,
but more fun to talk maybe.
Maybe
if I was always just saying those phrases to you, it might get a little annoying.
I don't know, but I think Roger has a good line. He says, because this scene surprises us in a movie that seems to be developing into a serious thriller, it puts us off guard. We're no longer sure where RoboCop is going, and that's one of the best qualities. And I think that's exactly true. I think watching this film, I was not expecting there to be hilarious commercials in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
Because it starts out so serious.
You're right.
Then it gets a little campy in a few parts. It's not campy the whole time.
Yeah.
It's just a few parts here and there. So I think it's a really good balance. What was your favorite part?
My favorite part, I probably just really enjoyed some of the fight scenes between Bodeker and RoboCop, and it's a good ending, and I loved most of the scenes that Albert was in because I just love watching him act. I think he's a great actor. I don't know that there's any one scene that I would say is like the best over any. I do think that Ebert's right that looking back, that like the brutal death at the beginning is very funny and it's like unexpected, even if you go into it knowing it's going to be a violent movie.
Yeah. Just
because of how it's set up. Yeah. And I think I really did enjoy it. I think the most impactful in terms of like how I think about if I was going to make a movie or like things you can do with movies would be the scene where he dies is in the hospital, the first person series. I think that was a very creative thing that maybe I wouldn't have thought of doing if I was just like designing this movie.
And some of the best movies are ones that you unexpectedly find to be awesome. Yeah. Like your bar is set so low. I mean, you were talking, I forget what movie we talked about.
No, I think it was this movie. I think I mentioned to Professor Johnson, I was just like, I didn't go into it with many expectations.
Yeah.
So sometimes your high expectations for a movie can kill your enjoyment a little bit.
Yeah.
If it doesn't live up to whatever your expectations were.
Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the commenters on Ebert's website says, it works on so many levels where it's a science fiction film, an action thriller, a social satire, and poignant human tragedy. It's one of the Verhoeven's best science fiction films, in this guy's opinion. I'll say Uncouth Angel is his username. That was 11 years ago, so we're just now getting to this. But I think he's exactly right. I expected it to be a science fiction film and nothing more, and I'm glad that we ended up finding so much meaning in it and so much to talk about it. I think my favorite film, or favorite film, Seven Samurai, but my favorite part of the film was at the end when Dick Jones falls through the window and the other executive guy puts his thumbs up towards.
That really puts a cherry on top of the movie.
It's like even after all these events happen, nothing changes.
Yeah,
they will still try to make that utopia no matter what. So
they're not going to learn from their mistakes,
and it shows the inevitability of this progression of the human mind towards man's own end. What he thinks, what he invents to be the greatest achievement of mankind is his own work.
Right. So, Which, to summarize it with Blade Runner, I think we see in both that there's this push that the best achievement the end of man that they can have is creating themselves. Yeah. Like creating humans. Yeah. Is essentially what
replicants
people want to do.
RoboCops.
And we see in both of these movies, they're
the
not
Fifth
exactly
Element.
There's something about these things that are created by humans that aren't exactly humans because we're creating them as beings and created in the image of God, but now we're creating beings that were created in the image of the image of God. Yeah, in the image of the image of God, which are created, and then of course these images of God, us on Earth, we have fallen to sin, so now we're creating more potential destruction, sin with our creation potentially.
I mean, it will be sinful. It's just.
Yeah. Now, can they take accountability for their sin? That's no. But
this is also theoretical.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just interesting to see all of this.
They're almost no different than animals.
Yeah.
But
I was thinking about that. I was like, when you mentioned the replicants like causing them to suffer, I was like, it's a very similar argument to why you shouldn't make animals suffer because they don't have a soul, but you should still hate suffering. Yeah, you should hate suffering, level. And you know that they're feeling it and experiencing it, and that feeling is like real. Like they feel it. They have a mind to the degree that they can know that this feels bad. And
although they don't have souls, they're still tangible representations of what we should.
Yes.
We should be thinking about these things. And dogs.
Their life.
They're loyal. They're loving.
Yeah.
Those are qualities that we should admire. And then when dogs are vicious and evil, then we should hate them, unlike most people in society today.
And when they're cats,
we should hate them no matter what.
Yeah.
Unless you're tigers, I like those. Those are cool. Like especially white tigers.
Yeah.
Those are so cool. I was watching on YouTube the other day. I just searched up animals versus humans and saw whatever came up. And there was a video. There were so many videos of like lions that were in zoos, and they would just jump up on the glass and scare a bunch of little kids. And it was super cute because some of the kids would love it, some of them would hate it. But that's what I spend my time doing. So, what other thoughts do you have about it, Ben?
No, that's pretty much it. The main takeaway I would say is this is a great movie if you love sci-fi. No, seriously, that's like
it's a great movie.
I cannot say enough good things about this. Will be a movie that I will be like in 3 months. I'll be like, I really want to rewatch RoboCop. It's gonna be one of those movies that.
But then you won't because you always want to see the new movie.
Because I always want to see. I know you're right. That's why it's good to have the movie vault. So at
least you'll have more time after you get married, as you always say.
Yeah, way more time, of course. But yeah, I'll be excited to rewatch this. I'll be excited to see more jokes that I didn't see the first time and dive back into the world. Maybe watch RoboCop 2.
Maybe. I considered it right afterwards.
It is directed by the guy who directed the Star Wars sequel, who directed Empire Strikes Back. So
Irvin Kershner?
So that's just kind of a weird thing.
They're like, all right, we need to double down on this. Let's do it.
Yeah.
They also made a third RoboCop.
Sequels. Yeah, that's the one that was aimed more at kids.
And then they have RoboCop Rogue City, I think, which is maybe a film or TV show. I know they have a TV show. And then they have a new RoboCop. I don't know. I think it's a remake. I think that was 2014 or something like that. That's when I actually first heard of RoboCop, was when that movie came out. And it looks like he's wearing metal spandex. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really have much else to say.
I don't either. Way to close out the sci-fi quartet. Yeah. Well, so next we're doing
Paul Newman.
Yeah, but what film? Does it matter?
I think is the first one The Hustler.
It probably is The Hustler because that actually came out.
We're known for saying things wrong on the live podcast and then doing things differently. So we won't change that. It's going to be The Hustler.
Well, it came out, I think, in late 70s. I don't know. My Wi-Fi is not working. Okay, probably The Hustler. If not, then whatever.
Yeah.
So, oh, well.
Lots of Paul Newman in the future. Coming your way.
Well, contact Hedman England Agency if you have any RoboCop issues with your RoboCop.
Link in the description.
And it's 614-486-7300. 614-486-7300. And tell them Ben and Zach sent you. And RoboCop.
Boom.
And do we want to do any movie highlights real quick? Do you have any?
I don't have any.
You don't have any?
No.
I actually don't either.
And I haven't really been watching TV either.
To be fair, when we watched this film, it was right next to finals.
Yeah. And I've been just continued studying after for my boards, so I haven't had a lot of free time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm still trying to watch Twin Peaks: The Return when I can. Watching some Rick and Morty. That's pretty much it.
Well, try to catch our last entry, which might be before this or after this. This might be the last entry. If not, then the Blade Runner is our last entry. Be sure to check out Professor Johnson's episode, which is a stellar episode. Many of the same themes.
And if you can get your hands on any of his work, I don't know where all of it's published, but check it out. Very talented guy.
I think his name's, is it Jonathan Johnson?
Jonathan Johnson.
John Johnson. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Easy to remember.
But, absolutely. Okay. All right, you want to close the vault?
Sure. Pew, 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 pew.